Welcome to Lynn Cullen Live, talk radio without the static. Email your questions and comments to lynn@pghcitypaper.com. And now your host, Lynn Cullen.
Hey there, welcome to yet another Lynn Cullen Still Alive. And it is December 10th. Geez, that means it's been 1 month since I went into the hospital to have surgery. Seems like eons ago. Wow. But we've talked often, right, about how time during this pandemic has really lost its normal meaning, its sense, where I don't know. Anyway, I think there's lots of stuff I've got here to talk about. I don't know that we'll be laughing as much as we did yesterday. As a matter of fact, I'm quite sure about that. But that was a wonderful respite. I'll definitely have Sally on with more regularity if she's game, and I suspect she will be. Oh gosh, guys, where to start? I want to start with one thing that is easy, just tiptoeing myself in a little bit. I got an email from Josh who said, "Hi, Lynn, just heard this sad news, and what accompanies it is a picture of an actor, David Lander, who played the television character Squiggy. Now, I noted his obit, his passing in the last few days, and I did not read it. I did not read the obituary, and for someone who's as into obituaries as you might wonder why. Well, I didn't because I thought, I don't know this guy. I never watched the show. There's something unappealing to me about his hair, the character's hair. And I just simply was not at all pulled in or interested. So imagine my dismay when I read Josh's email today. Hi, Lynn, just heard this sad news. Do you remember when you interviewed him? Here is my recent Facebook post remembering your interview. I remember he was a guest on Lynn Cullen's show back when she was on radio. Big baseball guy. He said he was at the famous Doc Ellis LSD no-hitter game. Also, I remember in that interview, he said he was a student at Carnegie Tech, now CMU, and that's where he and Michael McCain came up with Lenny and Squiggy. That was a really fun interview. Oh, dear. I have zero memory of that. And I have often said that in order for me to recreate any history of my life or my career, I cannot at all rely on my own recollection, because my own recollection is absolutely almost nil. And the same is true even of my entire life, really. So I don't know what that says about me, that I certainly don't live in the past, I'll tell you that. I don't live in the past at all, but I don't even remember it. I'm sort of speaking of time, I'm sort of dislodged from it, that I feel no sort of continuum. It is very odd, and it's upsetting. Josh, I know you didn't mean to upset me by sending me this warm recollection of an interview I did with a guy who I have no memory of ever meeting. And this happens to me all the time. It is creepy. I'm assuming this was Laverne Shirley he was on. This is how out of it I am. Yeah? And here again, I never watched that show. When was that on? In the 70s? Because I think all of these sort of iconic sitcoms and television shows and popular culture, sort of landmarks and points of where so many people can get together and share memories and even quote from scripts. I have zero memory. But in my defense in that regard, I did not watch television. Hardly at all. I watched a little bit in the early 60s, and then I think mid-60s, well into the 90s, I don't think I really watched it. Nor did I listen to the radio. And I remember when they came for me at WTAE to fill in for one of the radio talk show hosts at the radio station. I said, I've never even listened to talk radio. I don't even know what it is. How can I possibly do that? I don't know what it is. And they pushed me, and down I went. It was on the first floor. And wow, my life opened up because I really liked it. But what was I doing? I don't know. I really don't know. But I am not a child of TV and radio like so many of my generation and younger are. And I don't know what it was I was doing. I was probably sitting, depressed in my room, staring at the wall. I don't know. And, this leads to some soul searching about what kind of an oddball I am. But anyway, this freaked me out. So I had an interview with them. I remember very few interviews. Very few. I mean, I've interviewed God knows how many millions of people, not millions, thousands. And the ones that I can recollect are, just a handful. And usually had to do with some connection made, or that I was enamored in some way of the person. But gee whiz. So I just have to share that. I don't know. It's mostly I'm going to be living in my own head with this. But I really, I think in many ways, note to myself, talk to therapist. Talk to therapist. Why am I not even, I don't know, a spectator or interested in my own existence enough to recall it? Somebody, many times people have said, you should write a memoir, I could no more do that. Even though I have, great stories, which is why I was able to do that one woman show and just share some. And anything I shared are some of the memories I do have that I have kept. But I mean, we all do that, right? Where you disregard whole chapters of your existence. I guess we airbrush it. I tend to hang on to the parts that are good stories because I am by nature an entertainer. So the everyday kind, I don't know. I'm sorry, I'm babbling. Speaking of our own histories, I came across something today. It's just another indication of how we don't know our history, let's say, of our country. And the reason we don't know it is not necessarily our own fault, because we were never taught it. Which is not to say we were not taught a history. We were, but it was a bunch of myths. In many cases, a pack of lies. Every once in a while, a little factoid made its way in. So this was one of the unsettling things about anybody who graduated from high school and then went off to college. And in that first year in college, you get disabused of so much that had literally been, put in your head like, well, the civic propaganda that it was. But in today's New York Times, there is a little piece about Johns Hopkins. We were talking yesterday about how Sally's last name does not have an S on the end, Sally Wiggins. Have you ever wondered how Johns Hopkins had an S on John? But he did. And apparently so did his father before him was Johns. That was his name, Johns Hopkins, a plethora of S's. But this is about that man, Johns Hopkins, who famously, of course, founded a university and a renowned research hospital. And the mythology, the history, let's just say, the history of Johns Hopkins, the man and the institutions he founded, have been well known for over 100 years. Okay. And just now, people digging around in records have started saying, whoops, it appears that story we've been telling each other all these years about this man are a pack of lies. And the story, as anyone who probably ever went to Johns Hopkins and was probably told at some, welcoming seminar, Johns Hopkins was a 12-year-old boy away at boarding school when he was summoned home by his father in, did I say 1807? Yeah. To work in the family's sprawling tobacco fields in Maryland, because his father, a Quaker, had a reckoning, a moral reckoning with himself, and had decided that owning slaves was antithetical to his faith. And so the young boy was pulled back to do the work the slaves had done because his father had freed them all. That's the story. That's part of the story. And then how young Johns grew up to be this incredibly successful businessman and a committed abolitionist. Well, guess what? Yeah, I don't even have to, right? It's bullshit. It's just a story that his descendants, he had no children. His niece wrote a book about her wonderful uncle and his father, and these stories that families tell each other about our histories and where we came from and what we stood for are often, 85% bunk. I don't know what bunk your family's been passing from generation to generation. But we had an interesting thing in my family recently where we got an awakening of the bunk that we all thought about my father's family, which had been told us by my father, which had been told him by, I guess, his father, and which turns out to be historically totally inaccurate. And this we found out because in one of those fantasy things that everybody wants, I was contacted, as were my siblings, by lawyers from somewhere saying that some woman had died and had left no will, and they were looking all over records for heirs, and that our names popped up. Never heard of this woman, never heard of what turned out to be an entirely different branch of the family, of my grandfather's family. So again, what we're told, what we believe, and why we have no reason to disbelieve. All of these stories, I guess they contain a grain of truth. Or not. Anyway, back to Johns Hopkins. The university has been really working on trying to find the truth. Turns out the university's motto is "the truth will set you free." And so one of the people that's trying to get to the truth says, for an origin story to be foundational and durable, it also has to be true. So it's been late coming, but Johns Hopkins is about to have its day to ponder the lies it has told itself and the unhappy truths that it has disregarded. There is no evidence whatsoever of Johns Hopkins' father freeing any slaves. For that matter, Johns Hopkins himself held slaves. There is no record whatsoever of him having been an abolitionist. In fact, Johns Hopkins did not admit the first black undergraduate to that university until 1945. So, that ain't just Johns Hopkins, folks. That's us. All of us. I think there's a caller. Hello.
Good morning.
Hi.
Good morning.
Good morning.
We love you because your babbling is always meaningful and entertaining babbling.
Oh,
so
well, good.
Stop.
That's good to hear because I am babbling.
And in particular, today when you were talking about, not being able to recall things and so on, just a quick vignette that you might appreciate. My high school class is approaching its 50th anniversary.
Yeah.
And this past spring, we formed a committee to start planning our 50th reunion, which never, of course, occurred because of the whole situation. So we're postponing it and hoping we can do it next year. But at any rate, tracking down many classmates from our class, I ended up finding about four or five of us that were particularly close during those years. And we ended, as a result of the planning for the reunion, scheduling. So we now do a Zoom call with each other every couple of weeks. And it is nothing more than just reconnecting and reminiscing about things. But, the amazing thing that happens is that when we're on these calls, 4 of the 5 people, for example, will say, well, do you remember when such and such happened? And I will, now these were not just kind of everyday, these were kind of seminal events, right?
Right, that they all remember.
In our history, they all remember. I have not a clue. And the
God,
same
you're like
thing
me.
happens. The same thing could happen with any one of us. The same thing happens. A small group will say, well, what about this? And someone will say, what are you even talking about? That's not even possible. Or what the hell?
Right.
and it's just amazing how remarkable that process of planning has been, how wonderful it has been to reconnect with a couple of these people had literally not spoken to each other for 50 years since we walked off the high school graduation stage.
Yeah.
And here we are kind of getting back together and just renewing those memories and renewing those relationships. And it's been a wonderful process. I just thought you might appreciate hearing
Well, I
that.
do. And thank you very much. And I'm sure when you do have your reunion, it'll be mind-blowing. Believe me.
We hope so.
Yeah.
All right.
Thank you so
care.
much. Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Bye. Father Joseph says, well, if you don't remember things, then what I heard you saying, well, if you don't remember things, then what I hear you saying is that you don't hold grudges. Wow. Let me think about that. I think I'm capable of a grudge or two. Yeah, maybe listen, it's not like I don't remember anything. And I think sometimes when you feel someone's done you wrong, that might be something you remember. But I'm not much of a grudge holder. All the boyfriends in my life, all romantic relationships ended amicably. Except two, but there were many. And I'm not one. And my divorce was amicable. I'm not. Well, I don't know. I know that bearing grudges is a bad thing, but I am capable of stewing over what I consider to be slights. And Father Joseph goes on to say, at West Point, as freshmen, we weren't allowed to listen to the radio or watch television. We received the New York Times Monday through Friday, and we were expected to know it. Upperclassmen would ask us what we've read, and they expected us to read articles well below their headlines. Well, that's a good thing. I want to credit West Point for maybe, making that a habit for some of you. I read newspapers and magazines voraciously from the time I was a child. And it only makes sense that that's where I got my love of, following news, I guess. What we got here? Oh, the other day, I noted, it was when Susan was on, because she had a funny line. When Susan was on, and I said, did you see that they've, Mount Everest is now said to be 2 feet taller. And I said, I was wondering how that happened. Did it somehow grow, or was there a new kind of more accurate measurement done? And Susan opined that it grew by 2 feet because of all the garbage people are leaving when they get to the top, which is, by the way, something that's so disgusting. That all those people who go up there, once they use something, they don't want to carry it anymore. They discard it. The whole, going up the summit, you're like passing a open garbage dump. Let alone there's probably a bunch of dead bodies, frozen all around you too. I can't imagine. Anyway, and then we wondered if, Susan said, well, maybe, because it through, tectonic activity and earthquakes and stuff, maybe it, got pushed up a little bit more. But I couldn't understand that because if, in order to get pushed up 2 feet, that'd have to be one hell of an earthquake. And we would know about that earthquake. So anyway, I'm sure some of you already do know this, but what it was is that China and Nepal that share that border decided they would together try to do a new measurement. And they did, and they found 2 more feet. And I'm not sure that let me see. There was a possibility having to do with geological change. And it says here that scientists say, yes, Everest is getting taller because of tectonic shifts. What is called the Indian plate is slipping under what is called the Eurasian plate. And as it does, it lifts up the Himalayas, or the Himalayas, whatever you say. But in fact, earthquakes can reduce a mountain's height. Anyway, they don't have a clue. It does, however, the height shifts with time and tectonics. There was a devastating earthquake in 2015, and it was widely speculated that Mount Everest and others peaks in the Himalayas had lost height. But now this suggests the opposite. Whatever. So it ain't easy to, as it turns out, to measure the height. It takes surveyor types and people having to climb up it, and they have to know always where precise sea level is, since that's where the measurement begins, right? And that ain't easy, since it ain't anywhere near any sea. And then to get this measurement, they had to climb. They climbed it, and they carried a global navigation satellite receiver and an antenna, and they had to stand up there at the highest point for nearly 2 hours to capture certain data. And they think they've got the best measurement. The first time a surveyor had captured satellite data, or data, if you say that. So that's it. That was just a follow-up. Thought you might find that of some interest. Well, I'm not surprised to hear this. Apparently, before Joe Biden and his crew take residence in the White House, they intend to have that place fumigated. I mean, they are going in with people with hazmat suits, spraying it down. I don't know about you, but personally, I would not want to move into my new house and, sleep in the same room that Donald Trump had just vacated. I would not, personally, but he's got to do it. So anyway, they are making plans to ensure that the White House is safe. And who knows when who's going to evacuate or leave, and in what manner, and all of that. We still we can't help speculate, but in fact we don't know. There is some reportage that, and this sounds very Trump-like, that Trump is considering trying to upstage Biden's inaugural by holding a rally in Florida at the same time. Doesn't that sound exactly like him? Doesn't that just have the ring of certainly plausibility? to it? Yeah. He had originally, some person in the White House say that the president was saying, I'm going to take Air Force One down and I'm going to have, and somebody had to, I don't know if they told him, hey, Air Force One ain't going to be yours to take anywhere. Because Air Force One doesn't belong to you anymore. It has to be at Andrews Air Force Base, fueled, ready to go. Anywhere it has to carry the president, whose name will be Joe Biden. So I don't know. We'll see. And this is going to be the kind of crap that he will pull because of his really sick, mentally ill need. For a guy of such extreme narcissism to have managed in his dreams and in reality to ascend to the most important, supposedly, job in the world. That position, which gives somebody more attention than anybody else all over the globe. For a narcissist to grab that gold ring, brass ring, he is never going to be able to let that go. Anything now is a step down. And I don't think a narcissist, now that he's been fed at that level, that ego of his has been fed at that level, is going to be able to let it go. So I don't know what we're going to be in for, but I'm going to suspect that it won't be pretty. Hang on here while I sort of regroup. You know what, by the way, he's doing today? Yeah, your president. He's still trying to get the election overthrown. And today he's having lunch. Let me get this straight, at sort of a late lunch. He's having lunch, I have it here, at 12:45. And this lunch will be held in the cabinet room. And he will be lunching with, I think, a number of attorneys general of the states, Republican states, who are trying to get the Supreme Court to overturn the election. Now, we all know, because we're not insane, that the chances of the Supreme Court overturning this election are nil. Even a court filled with extraordinarily conservative justices, even a court with 1/3 of the justices elevated to the court by Trump himself. And of course, in his screwed up head, he thinks that means they're beholden to him. Now, I'm a little unclear, but I think it's 17 states, 17 attorneys general are going to be having lunch in the cabinet room at 12:45 today with Trump. And these are states that have joined this great state of Texas. And it's the Texas case that they are behind. So these are the states that are petitioning the Supreme Court to overturn the election. In the last 4 years, we have lost the capacity to recollect what our reaction to this kind of thing would have been pre-Trump. Because these outrageous things are happening and have happened in the last 4 years with, every hour on the hour. And will continue to until January 19th. In fact, unfortunately, I saw some unsettling news today that, and this we did know, that Trump apparently had wanted to attack Iran. And this was what, last month? And even his sycophantic top advisors talked him out of it, including Mike Pompeo and Pence, who said it would ignite violence all across the Middle East. But of course, that's sort of what he would want to do. Why? Because he'd be leaving Joe Biden this steaming pile of you-know-what on his desk when he comes to work the first day, as opposed to the letter that other presidents leave their successors, wishing them well and giving them advice. But there is some concern that Trump might still want to do it. And his time is running out. As I said, he has till January 19th to pull something like this. And that now that the Supreme Court is going to turn him down too, as has every other court, now that his chances, even if in his head he really thinks that he has a shot at winning this election, as that goes up in smoke, then he's going to have to do something to create the kind of pandemonium, the kind of chaos, the kind of sort of vengeful action that he will feel, a need to do, because he's nuts. He's as bad a man as there is. Seriously. So anyway, I know that's a little unsettling, but I wanted to let you know. Gigi writes, family stories. In my family, it was the opposite. No one told stories of family. Until we were in our 30s, my sister and I never knew that we had a great-grandparent who had fought for the Union in the Civil War. And he did that shortly after coming to the United States. We never knew. Why no one talked about this. Yeah, that's wonderful. After finding this out, I went to Manassas and found his name in the book of soldiers who fought there. I got more into genealogy and eventually found out that my mother's side of the family dates back to the 1600s in this country. And they were founders of a now large county in Maryland. For whatever reason, I don't think my mother's family knew their history. It's pretty amazing pretty amazing to find all this out. Yeah. Well, I got a feeling, I do have a feeling that most family histories, especially those where there are no records, as in many Jewish families, you really need a professional genealogist to uncover much of, I think, most, if you're a Jew of Eastern European origin, as I am. It is really next to impossible to go back much more than the latter part of the 1800s. It just isn't. Those records have gone up in smoke. They've been destroyed. A lot of name changes, trying to run for their lives. It's just, unmarked graves. Who knows? There's just no way. And a lot of Jewish families, I know it's the same as being, an African American, somebody whose family came to this country in chains and was enslaved, and also who lost their names, their history, and all of that. That becomes very hard to do. So you, especially European Christian white people, you're very, very lucky if you are interested in your history to be able to trace it. I mean, I would just love to know, but I don't think it's going to happen. I know I do have a second cousin who does try, and he's found little things here and there, but it's next to impossible. Which reminds me, what is that show on PBS, Finding Your Roots? Is that what it's called, with, what's his name? The Harvard professor? Is that Gates, right? Am I right? I don't know. Yeah, here again, the head. I happened upon it. Boy, that's an interesting show. I happened upon it. He traces the genealogy of famous people. And I happened upon a show, although I missed the first part of it, where he was doing the genealogies of two men, one of whom was Senator Sanders, okay, and the other of whom was a guy who mimicked him on Saturday Night Live, Larry David. And he did both of their genealogies. And I swear, I can't remember much of it. But at the end, he told them both that they, in fact, although granted it's a little bit of a string, that they were related. Which might be why they are so, Larry David has no trouble. Why am I blanking on Sanders? Oh, good. I don't want to tell you that, because then you'll think I'm really becoming decrepit, and you'll never listen to me again. I think I might have a caller. Go ahead, please.
Good morning, Lynn. It's Ella from Penn Hills. How you doing?
Oh, hi. Ella, I got your sweet note just the other day when it was finally sent to me from City Paper, and thank you so much.
Oh, you're so welcome. The reason I'm calling, I'm coming to your defense, but first of all, I'd like to wish you a bright Hanukkah. I hope the lights are real bright for you tonight.
Thank you.
Okay, I learned this. Thank you. I learned this about a year or so ago, and we all have a a gate at our conscience or subconscious. And when you're interacting or learning new things, you have the capacity to stop it. You have like a gate. And this Charles Handel states it this way: when the watchman is off guard, in your case, it would be the watchwoman. The subconscious mind is then open to the suggestion of fear, hate, selfishness, greed, whatever, and negative forces. So I think when you interviewed Squiggy, you just did the interview, but you didn't allow it to go through your gate.
Well, there was that, and there was a million other interviews. I don't have any memory of any of it. People say, how long were you at WTA? I don't know. When did you go to? I don't know.
Well, that's okay. You didn't put that in you didn't allow it to go into.
I don't know what I put in there. my gatekeeper, or whatever this is I think I'm going to fire the woman because she ain't doing the job.
Well, okay, you'll give someone else a job. But another thing I wanted to say, you made the statement, I don't live in the past. Well, it really helped me because I was on a wildflower trip with Carlo College, and there was a nun that directed it.
Uh-huh.
And I asked her about a certain flower, and she goes to me, I don't know, and I don't care.
Oh, my God.
I said, oh, my Lord. So I don't know. I mean, it really, really hurt, but I didn't want to mess up the trip. So I get home, and I call her on the phone, and I said, sister, why did you say that to me? Well, I don't live in the past. And that's the answer I got.
Wow.
So thank you. I don't know how it's gonna get out of my mind, but this is what you have to do. You have to tell people what's on your mind. But Dad did it.
Wow.
So thank you.
Thank you.
You're so welcome. So long.
Thank you, Ella. Okay.
You're welcome.
Bye-bye. Bye.
So long.
Bye. Happy Hanukkah. I think there's another caller there too. Hello.
Hello, Lynn. This is Father Joseph. How are you today?
Oh, I'm fine. Are you in your car or something?
I am. I hope you can hear me.
I can.
So I think two things about President Trump in regard to his impact after Biden takes over. I think the first thing will depend on the media. If the media continues to cover him and cover every little tweet and things like that, that would be, the mainstream media, that would be not helpful. So I think that would be, they've seen him as they've been blinded by a shining light. They're mesmerized by this shiny thing, and that's Trump and his tweets. So I think that's going to be a problem.
Okay, right, because I want to ask you, what is your gut feeling about whether or not the mainstream media will suck it up and ignore the bright, shiny object that is Donald Trump?
I think it's going to take them about a year to really get over it. I mean, as we move on to other things, I think every presidency has some sort of significant event that really focuses on how well the president manages his staff and handles a crisis. I would like to say there aren't going to be any more crises, but I think there will be, and I think that's really going to shift the media's attention. And I think some of the things that Biden does will help if he's going to be more transparent with the media. I mean, actually have real press conferences and things like that. I think those things will help as well.
Yeah.
There's some fringe organizations that will continue to continue to act as if Trump might be the shadow president or something like that, and hopes that they can keep things going. But I think that's more about viewership and readership and dollars than anything else. So that's the first thing I think. The other thing is that some of the moves that Trump is making on his way out. I think he reclassified some government employees.
Yes.
To fire. There's a classification series in which you can do sort of like if they're there at the discretion of the administration that's in power. And so I think the government federal employees union is really upset about that. OMB has reclassified, I think, or tried to reclassify like half of its population, its employees to do that. And I think the issue was Trump is always suspicious about a deep state, and
Right.
so in so doing, he's trying to reclassify a bunch of folks, and then quickly put his own people in there, and in so doing, he's trying to create his own deep state.
That's right. That is exactly right. And not a lot of people are paying attention to this. It's amazing. Now, you can bet he doesn't have the smarts to do this, but there are people around him who are engineering this kind of thing. And that's true. That's true. He's trying to put his own deep state in. Yeah.
I think you speak with precision there. I think that he surrounded himself with some true ideologues,
right.
who are going to do those things. And I think a lot of the things he's done are based on those ideas. So that's the issue. So we'll have to wait and see. I think it's going to take Biden. I think it's going to take him 2 years to really get things going after he cleans up the mess. The irony is, there was this mantra about drain the swamp. Remember that? He brought the swamp in bucket loads, and so the whole thing strikes me as rather ironic.
Well, ironic is one word for it. Oh gosh. Well, yeah. The interesting times we live in are going to continue. There's little doubt of that. It's always good to hear from you.
Oh, take care.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Bye. So there's also this, the feds and a bunch of states, going after Facebook for essentially being a monopoly. Duh. Excuse me. And let's add to that Google and Amazon. God, this is a very monopolistic time, and these gargantuans have, without a doubt, created global monopolies that, if we do believe in a marketplace, have to be broken up. But whatever case that is, believe me, its pathway through our judicial system will enrich untold attorneys and last probably longer than I'll be alive. So I'm not waiting for any quick resolution. I wanted to share one other thing, and this, again, it has to do with history, knowing it, and being disabused of stuff you knew or people you admired. It's hard. It's a constant, isn't it? I read the other day, and this is not what I was going to talk about, how the great author, children's author, Roald Dahl, is that how he pronounces it? Was just this flagrant Jew hater. I mean, he didn't hide it. He was, even up until his last days, was, filled with such just gut hatred of Jews that it's mind-blowing. Now, that doesn't mean I can't, a Jewish kid can't enjoy his books, because that crap didn't make his way into his books. But it sure as hell takes the wind out of you. Yeah? So here's something else. I want to note the passing of Chuck Yeager, who was always this bigger than life figure. And on top of that, handsome as holy hell. I remember even as a young girl when I was reading about him breaking the sound barrier and stuff, I just thought, God, he's good looking. So I had a crush on this guy since the 50s. And reading his obit, this is the guy who, when Tom Wolfe wrote The Right Stuff, this is the guy who he was talking about. This is the guy who Sam Shepard played in the another guy I loved played in the movie. I mean, everything about him. He's just, so I was reading the New York Times obit, and about the breaking the sound barrier. No one had the nerve to do it, because the sense had been that as soon as you got to that speed, the plane you were flying in would be torn apart, literally torn apart by shock waves. And this guy was brave enough to say, well, let's give it a shot. And he started as a plane mechanic and had a high school education, came out of small town West Virginia, and enlisted in the Army Air Force, and then made his way into being a pilot. And then World War II, he got shot down over France by the Germans, and survived, parachuted into woods, was luckily found by French underground, who patched him up because he had leg and head wounds. And then he made his way, mostly on foot, to Spain, which was neutral. He had to climb the Pyrenees, apparently carrying another severely wounded flyer with him. And then they were returned to the base in England, where, generally speaking, a pilot who'd been through that kind of thing was not put back into combat. He, however, petitioned to go back. And on October 12th, 1944, he led a three fighter squadrons. He downed 5 German planes over Bremen, Germany, which made him an ace in one day, and then shot down another 4 planes the next month in one day. So he was quite the ace. He even went back to Vietnam, flew 127 missions. But then there was this thing in the obit, buried deep toward the end of it. And it pulled him off the pantheon, the pedestal I had him on, and made him just a complicated, very imperfect man with a horrible flaw. Chuck Yeager was, right there when President Kennedy said, we got to go into space. And Kennedy said he wanted a diverse group to be part of the effort to select the first astronaut corps. And of course, back in that day, the first the effort for diversity certainly didn't mean any women, but the understanding was that a black pilot would get in. And one did, Edward Dwight Jr. He had been a former test pilot like Yeager. He was the only non-white astronaut candidate. He was, needless to say, or you would know his name, never selected. He retired from the Air Force in 1966. He became a sculptor. And I remember reading about him, actually, not maybe a year or so ago. It's a story that breaks your heart. And he became a really very good sculptor, and he specialized in creating bronze sculptures of heroic figures in Black history. But last year, he sat for an interview with the New York Times. And he said this, because Chuck Yeager was in charge of this astronaut training class. And Edward Dwight told the New York Times this, I will quote him. Every week, right on the dot, General Yeager would call me into his office and say, "Are you ready to quit? You know, this is too much for you. And you're going to kill yourself, boy." Calling me a boy. And I'm an officer in the Air Force. Breaks my heart. Yeager was asked about that. And he wrote to the New York Times this. So this would have been last year. Isn't it great that Ed Dwight found his true calling and became a sculptor? He also said that he had never called him boy. Well, I don't know about you, but I don't believe Chuck Yeager. All righty. Well, I think that's it for me this day. Actually, this week. Good to be back in the saddle. Have a good 4 days. Again, happy Hanukkah to my Jewish listeners. And please be safe. Be extra safe. Okay? I'll see you Monday.
Lynn Cullen Live, Monday through Friday from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. and archived at pghcitypaper.com. The opinions expressed on Lynn Cullen Live are those of the host and do not necessarily reflect the viewpoints of Pittsburgh City Paper or its advertisers.